One of the biggest booking decisions WWE is faced with all year is who is going to win the Royal Rumble matches. Not only is it a decision that dictates the course of WWE television in the run-up to WrestleMania, it also ensures that whoever has their hand raised at the end, a hand they can then use to point at the WrestleMania sign, as is tradition, will be written into WWE folklore. Sometimes WWE gets it absolutely bang on. Ric Flair in 92, Steve Austin in 98, and Brock Lesnar in 03 all immediately come to mind. But sometimes they mess it up and pick the wrong person, even when a much more agreeable alternative is staring them in the face. Now, hindsight is 2020 and all that, and while I haven't quite cracked the science behind this time travel bollocks yet, if I could go back and convince the powers that be to change course and choose another person to win the Rumble in some years gone by, then I would. I can't do that, but I do have a YouTube channel and we're in the middle of another lockdown, so why not do a bit of fantasy Rumble rebooking while speculating about who is going to be given the honor, rightly or wrongly, in 2021. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 WWE stars who should have won the Royal Rumble and when. Join us. Number 10, Chris Jericho in 2012. Chris Jericho has done just about everything, not just in WWE, but in wrestling in general. A first ballot Hall of Famer, if there ever was one, there is nonetheless one major accomplishment missing from Y2J's sports entertainment resume. He never won the Royal Rumble. He's competed in his fair share of them and came closest to winning the thing in 2012 when he was last eliminated by Sheamus. That victory set the Celtic Warrior on course for a WrestleMania showdown with Daniel Bryan, and we all know what happened there, while Jericho ended up battling CM Punk for the WWE title in a bout that was positioned higher up the card than Sheamus's on the night. So why not just have Jericho win the thing and give a bit more credibility to his and Punk's title match? The man of 1,004 holds had recently returned after a year away, trolling fans with his obnoxious silent treatment act that generated a ton of heat. The 2012 Rumble was decidedly lacking in star power, and most figured that Jericho was the obvious winner, which is why WWE decided to go with Sheamus instead. Personally, given his character, I would have had Chris come out at number 30, with the other 29 participants having already been eliminated, declaring him the winner by default without breaking a sweat and then celebrating wildly. As I say, it would have been in keeping with his shtick at the time and would have been really, really funny too. And at the end of the day, that's what's truly important, wrestling fans. Number 9, The Undertaker in 1997. Granted, The Undertaker won the Rumble a decade after, but he should have won this one too for a multitude of reasons. Shawn Michaels losing his smile in the build-up to WrestleMania 13 really cocked things up, and assuming that HBK still spits the dummy out, I would have gone with the dead man winning the Rumble by last eliminating Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'd have still had the Texas Rattlesnake thinking he had won after sneaking back in the ring, only for the decision to be overturned after the fact. The Phenom could then go on to face the WWE Champion at the Showcase of the Immortals, as he did anyway, though I'm not sure I would have had Sid be that man. Instead, why not, in this alternate universe, put the belt on Vader and give Taker somebody he can really work with, giving them the chance to have a proper show stealer on the grandest stage. Austin and Brett still have their no DQ submission match because, let's face it, you don't want to mess with perfection, while Sid can do anything from, I don't know, working as arena security to, better yet, just staying at home. I kid, but Austin's first Rumble victory was far from a triumph and could have been reserved for the following year when he was white hot and on a clear path to the WWE title. Number 8, Steve Austin in 1999. In this fantasy world where I can go all Bernard's watch and change time and space and right some wrongs, I would still have Austin be a 3-time Royal Rumble winner, mind you. After winning the 1998 edition, I would have the Bionic Redneck repeat the feat the following year. The 99 Rumble was perhaps the most storyline-driven one ever, with Austin and arch-enemy Vince McMahon drawing numbers 1 and 2 and brawling about before Stone Cold was attacked by the corporation backstage and taken away on a gurney. The chairman then did a spot of commentary until Austin returned, and in the end, McMahon bundled the Hellraiser over the top to win the match thanks to a timely distraction from The Rock. It was a cute novelty, and in the context of the Attitude Era, it sort of worked. But it's not a stretch to say that Vince didn't need to win the Rumble, and this detour on the road to WrestleMania was a needless one. Austin versus Rock was always the endgame, and Austin would have benefited more from winning the Rumble to get there. You could still do Austin McMahon in a cage the next month at St. Valentine's Day Massacre, with Austin putting his WrestleMania title shot on the line, but have him win the Rumble, last eliminating Mr. McMahon, perhaps with Rock's interference backfiring to spice things up further. Number 7, Shayna Baszler in 2020. The good news about WWE adding a Women's Royal Rumble match is that we now have 2 Rumbles to complain about. 2018 was just right, with Asuka winning the inaugural match, and I'm not sure anyone complained when the molten Becky Lynch prevailed a year later. The reaction to Charlotte Flair's win in 2020 wasn't as kind. The Queen is obviously one of WWE's top stars, and she usually delivers when put in a pressure-filled situation. But after so many years of Charlotte winning and being pushed as the face of the women's division, fans were crying out for something new, like Shayna Baszler, who was the bookies' favourite going into the match. Entering at number 30 and eliminating 8 people in a matter of minutes was impressive, but WWE should have pulled the trigger and put her over here. She went on to challenge Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's title at COVID Mania anyway, as Charlotte went after Rhea Ripley's NXT title. That's all well and good, but there were a million other ways to get the Nature Girl to her destination. They didn't have to sacrifice Baszler to do it, and a Rumble win would have further established the Queen of Spades as the real deal in the eyes of the fans. Number 6, Rusev in 2015. There were a lot of issues surrounding the 2015 Royal Rumble match, the biggest of which was WWE's deeply unpopular choice of winner. Booking new Golden Boy Roman Reigns to triumph a year after just coming up short in another very poorly received Rumble, don't worry, we'll get there, was another case of the company plowing ahead with the plan, regardless of what the audience actually wanted to see. The audience actually wanted to see Daniel Bryan win, and he was a good choice as any, but there were other potential winners that would have made for a more favourable outcome. Dolph Ziggler had some momentum off the back of his tour de force at the Survivor Series. Bray Wyatt was on the up and looked the business in the early stages of the Rumble match. And then there was Rusev, then the United States champion, who was beginning to come into his own as a performer. The Bulgarian Brute was the last man eliminated by the big dog, having hid outside of the ring for the latter stages of the match. Just give it to Rusev, give Dwayne the night off, and figure out how you get to WrestleMania 31 in the interim, perhaps placing more importance to intermediary show Fastlane. Anything but what it was. Number 5, Randy Savage in 1993. You know who looked a bit of a twat in the 1993 Royal Rumble match? Giant Gonzalez, but that's because he was wearing a furry singlet with airbrushed muscles on it. Randy Savage, decked out nicely in neon green and purple, thank you very much, made himself out to be a pillock by going for a cover after nailing Yokozuna with his big top rope elbow drop. While inexplicably attempting the lateral press, Yoko simply powered out, with Macho Man's momentum taking him over the top rope and to the floor. That meant Yokozuna gained a shot at Bret Hart's WWE title at WrestleMania 9. And while that's a respectable headline, and no doubt, it did lead to the Hitman dropping the strap to the Samoan, only to have Hulk Hogan then trot out and win the title with laughable ease. Sadly, Randy was confined to the commentator's desk during the show, with Vince McMahon believing he had nothing much left to give as an in-ring performer. He was, as history has shown, mistaken, and Randy, as the sentimental favourite challenging for the WWE title for the last time here, whether against Bret or Yokozuna, would have been compelling. Number 4, Dean Ambrose in 2016. The 2016 Rumble match switched things up a little, as the winner would not receive a crack at the WWE Champion in the main event of WrestleMania, but would actually walk out as WWE Champion. Vince McMahon decreed that Roman Reigns would have to defend his WWE World Heavyweight title, and do so as the first entrant in the match, which added some ready-made intrigue. There were a lot of potential winners in the match, with Brock Lesnar and Bray Wyatt singled out as favourites. In the end though, it was a returning Triple H who won, his second Royal Rumble triumph, and one that, in all honesty, just didn't really need to happen. This could have been used as a real opportunity to go in a different direction, rather than relying on a part-timer whose best days were behind him. I would have picked Dean Ambrose as the wildcard winner, having him accidentally eliminate his former Shield teammate in the process, thus setting up your WrestleMania main event. At Mania 32, Ambrose had that massively disappointing street fight with a clearly unmotivated Lesnar, while the big dog met the cerebral assassin in the lethargic show closer. Have the two younger guys clash, with the lunatic Fringe going into the contest as dual WWE and IC champion, and put Lesnar in with the Wyatts or something. Trips, meanwhile, can square off with new acquisition AJ Styles and work the leg for 20 minutes. Number 3, CM Punk in 2011. The 2011 Rumble was the biggest ever, with WWE adding an extra 10 men to the match, ostensibly so there would be more potential winners. In practice, it just made the match more cluttered than it needed to be, though the returns of of Booker T and Diesel were enjoyable, since as per usual, there were only a few people who you could actually see winning. Those included John Cena, Randy Orton, Alberto Del Rio, and CM Punk. ADR eventually won it, last eliminating Santino Marella, which was a great tease in fairness. Me, however, I would have gone with the straight-edge superstar, back then regaining momentum as the leader of the new Nexus. Punk put in a decent showing, entering at number 1 and lasting 35 minutes while notching 7 eliminations, but I would have had him go the distance, or alternatively, sneakily win with the help of Husky Harris, Mason Ryan, and the boys. The WrestleMania 27 main event of The Miz vs. John Cena is one of the weakest ever, and one of Punk's major bugbears during his time in WWE is that he never main evented Mania, so let's hop in the DeLorean and have it happen that he wins the big battle royal and goes on to face either Cena or The Miz, or both, in Atlanta. Failing that, have him defect to SmackDown and set his sights on World Heavyweight Champion Edge, instigating what would have no doubt been a killer feud and eventual match. Number 2, Mr. Perfect in 1991. Hulk Hogan won the 1990 Royal Rumble by last eliminating Mr. Perfect. That was the right call, as it led to the Hulkster meeting the Ultimate Warrior in their epic title versus title match at WrestleMania 6. He won the Rumble again in 91, last eliminating Earthquake, but I would have done things a little differently. I'd have Kurt Hennig avenge his loss from the year before by last getting rid of Hogan via shenanigans, of course. Perfect could then go on to face any number of people at Mania, whether it be Savage, Warrior, or even someone else from left field like a Roddy Piper or Undertaker. You could even have him wrestle Hogan and just, bypass all of that tasteless Gulf War stuff with Sergeant Slaughter. Really, Perfect was golden around this time and should have been built up for more. Often referred to as one of, if not the best wrestler to never be WWE champion, this could have been his shot in the spotlight. Another school of thought says that Perfect wins the Rumble in 1990 since he was undefeated on TV going into the match, and the mid-match confrontation between Hogan and Warrior was enough to get that ball rolling anyway. Number 1, Daniel Bryan in 2014. It's hard to fault WWE for booking a returning Batista on the cusp of international superstardom thanks to the impending release of blockbuster movie Guardians of the Galaxy to win his second Royal Rumble in 2014. He'd been gone for 3.5 years and he was a big deal, having previously won the Rumble in 2005 and headlined WrestleMania 21 against Triple H. A lot had happened in the near decade since the Animal captured his first World Heavyweight title in LA, however. 2014's WWE Universe wanted somebody who was the antithesis of Batista. They wanted Daniel Bryan. D-Bry had gotten over organically as a massive fan favourite, in part due to his gutsy in-ring performances and genuine likability, and in part because of his storyline conflict with the Authority. Tone-deaf and stubborn to a fault, WWE went ahead and not only didn't have Bryan win the 2014 Rumble match, they didn't even enter him in it. Instead, he lost to Bray Wyatt in a cracking opener. WWE could have saved themselves a lot of headaches and created some compelling television by having Bryan win here, setting up a bout with Randy Orton, Batista, or Triple H, or even a combination of the Evolution lads at WrestleMania. It all turned out okay in the end, of course, but it took some getting there and caused a lot of resentment, at least in the short term.